13th day of the People versus Cohee, Brian Cohee Jr. is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, including another 13 and a half years.
Parents have some concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room?
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
A human head and hands.
The unforgiving Colorado night held a secret. Beneath the pale glow of a full moon, a darkness festered within 19-year-old Brian Cohee. It wasn't just the shadows cast by buildings, but a hunger for something more sinister, a morbid curiosity that gnawed at his soul. Little did anyone know, this hunger would be satiated with the blood of an innocent man.
What in the world does he have in here? And I picked it up, and it was heavy. And I held it in my hand, and I was like, what in the world is this? What in the world? Is it like maggots covering something? Or I don't know. I better take it in the sink. So I carried it out to the sink, and it was double bagged. So I ripped open one bag, and I saw gold board. And I went, I ripped open the second bag, and it saw the bag. It's so beautiful. So I didn't open the second bag.
Now back to the Brian Cohee guilty verdict. Cohee confessed to killing and dismembering 69-year-old Warren Barnes, claiming, though, he wasn't guilty because he was insane when he committed the crime.
Warren Barnes, the reading man, a homeless soul known for his love of books, became the unwitting target. As he slept under the bridge, oblivious to the approaching evil, Cohee lurked, a predator stalking its prey.
Cohee, the man admitting to the murder, finally stopped typing on his keyboard to hear testimony from the people who lost the reading man.
Well, that's what confused me.
Yeah, exactly.
So, can we go back over, I didn't quite understand the dates or what ended up to the body. You said you tried, but it didn't work out.
What do you want to know?
Just start back at the beginning and go slow and tell me as many details as you can remember.
So, because I mean, I'm already going to jail for the 15 years probably.
I have no idea.
Because
We're at the beginning.
it's murder. I mean, I'm going to jail for 20 probably, but so I figure, well, I fight it.
Okay. So what's important to me is to learn as much about you and what you did and as I can. Well, as many details as you can give me, the better.
I drive a 2007 Ford 500,
Okay.
and I keep a small 18-inch bat in there for self-defense, and a large kitchen knife in the glove box, both for self-defense. Because I didn't really trust anyone. There weren't really any part of this town, so that's why I have both. And I am in a bad state of mind at that time. I have major depressive disorder, so I am not thinking something positively.
Okay.
And I'm eventually driving underneath the bridge near the sheriff's office. Just say this is the office, right? And this is the parking lot. Take a turn, and here is the bridge. That one. I have a question. You said people who have committed crimes like me, do we stay in this county jail or are we moved?
It all depends on what the judge says. So we were at the bridge?
Yeah, I was at the bridge. I was cruising. So, yeah, there was a road underneath, right? Out under the overpass. And I was driving along, and I see a shape here on the railway track. So I'm like, oh, interesting. So I go up, and as I'm looking, I see a large thing wrapped in a canvas.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's a homeless person. So I grab my knife, I put on 3 layers of gloves, because plastic gloves can betray their users because they're so thin, those vinyl gloves, by imprinting your fingerprints through. So I put on 3 on one hand. I took the knife, I pulled back the canvas, and I stabbed his neck.
Okay.
He was panicking at first, in his old man's voice. He was in his 50s. I know why I call him old man. He was saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why? Ah! And I just kept on stabbing his neck. Is it okay if I do a demonstration?
Oh, yeah.
This is him. I was strapped on top of him like this.
Okay.
And he couldn't fight back. It was actually surprisingly easy. I was barely breaking a sweat. I thought, oh, this guy, he's going to be tough. But no, it was actually surprisingly easy. And during the time, I was growling and making animalistic noises.
Why were you doing that?
I suppose it was a friendly. I was so excited, so rushed up on adrenaline and everything. And I go up and he's like, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "I don't want to do this for a long fucking time or something." And then I continued. The whole ordeal lasted about a minute and a half. And I stopped. When I was finished stabbing him, he took out his last breath, a grunt, and his head was halfway cut off and stabbed. All the while, no, actually, after I killed him, I just couldn't stop saying, "Sticky, dirty, dirty." What? And I wasn't feeling anything, but from what he's saying, I don't know. So, yeah. I suppose it was just me speaking out my mind at that moment. It was pouring out of my mind. Yeah. And then after that, I stripped his clothes. I cut open his belly to see his guts. They're really pink. Sorry, that was morbid. Then I cut off his head. I gave him a Glasgow smile. What's that? A Joker smile.
Driven by a twisted fascination with death, Cohee armed himself with a blade, a chilling echo of the finality he craved. The attack was brutal, a symphony of violence under the cold gaze of the moon. Cohee's weapon found its mark, plunging Barnes into a nightmare from which there would be no awakening. But the horror didn't end there. In a grotesque display of detachment,
a family finds justice after waiting 2 years to see the man who murdered their loved one sentenced to prison. 21-year-old Brian Cohee murdered and dismembered Warren Barnes in 2021.
Cohee dismembered Barnes, the act fueled by a morbid curiosity that had transcended boundaries. The weight of his actions, however, wouldn't be borne solely by the victim. Back at his home, Cohee harbored a gruesome trophy, Barnes's severed head, a macabre souvenir in his closet.
Newly laid flowers now blow in the wind, along with books and litter at the site where Warren Barnes was brutally murdered, decapitated, dismembered, and mutilated February 27th, 2021.
It was his mother, Terry, who stumbled upon the unspeakable truth. The stench of decay, the weight of the unknown, all culminated in a horrifying discovery. Her own son, the boy she raised, was entangled in a nightmare of his own making. The facade of normalcy shattered.
We begin tonight at the Mesa County Justice Center, where 21-year-old Brian Cohee Jr. is on trial for a murder that happened nearly 2 years ago.
The police arrived, their body cameras capturing the chilling confession that spilled from Cohee's lips. "I've always wondered what murder felt like," he stated, his voice devoid of remorse as if describing the weather. The casualness of his words sent shivers down spines, a testament to the darkness that had taken root within him. Cohee's trial became a battleground for sanity.
The Brian Cohee murder trial, an interesting day at the courthouse today for the trial of Brian Cohee.
He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, a desperate attempt to escape the consequences of his actions. But the evidence spoke volumes.
Cohee claimed he was insane at the time and therefore not guilty. The jury did not find his defense convincing enough. They found Cohee guilty on all counts. On count 1, first-degree murder, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Family members made several victim statements asking for the maximum sentence. Dixie Booniger, the niece of Barnes, remembered the day she found out her uncle had been murdered.
From his meticulous planning to his chilling disposal attempts, Cohee displayed a disturbing awareness of his crime. Police responded to the home in Colorado on the 1st of March 2021 after Cohee's parents made the gruesome discovery of Barnes's head and hands inside the closet. A Mesa County press release details.
Cohee was not at home when his mother discovered Barnes's severed head in her son's closet. He was at a friend's house. That friend sat across from Cohee today on the witness stand. When asked by prosecutors how she would classify their relationship, she said, quote, "We were each other's closest friends." That same friend says she could tell when Cohee was sad, and they had several discussions about mental health.
In body cam footage from his arrest, police questioned Cohee outside his home. "Your parents have concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room? What would it be?" an officer asked. "A human head and hands," Cohee responded calmly to the officer. "From that fella that went missing recently."
The mother of Cohee's friend says, quote, "He had left a little dramatically upon receiving the call from his mother over what she found in his closet." Jurors took to the stand to question Cohee while friends of the victim described the good nature of Barnes.
"How did you end up with him?" the officer asked, to which Cohee confessed, "I murdered him." When asked with what, Cohee replied, "A knife." Officers then pieced together the horrific events from Cohee's own words.
X5's Rob Hagan has been covering the trial from day one and stands by live with an update on the people of the state of Colorado versus Brian Cohee Jr.
Started this morning by striking the language kill kit from the record, bringing a dog right inside the courtroom, and Cohee's mom took the stand. Here are the latest details from day 3 of the people versus Cohee.
"I was driving along and I see a shape here on the railway track, so I am like, oh, interesting," Cohee said in a police interview. "I'm like, that's a homeless person, so I grabbed my knife. I put on 3 layers of gloves because plastic gloves can betray their users because they're so thin. I took the knife, I pulled back the canvas, and I stabbed his neck," he retold. "He was panicking at first," Cohee said, adding that he carried on repeatedly stabbing him.
11, while Terry Cohee took the witness stand with her emotional support dog reliving the horrific moments from nearly 2 years ago when she discovered a human head in her son's closet. Brian Cohee Jr. is pleading not guilty by reason of insanity to murder, and while his mother sits in anguish at the photo evidence of the head of Warren Barnes in her kitchen sink, a calm Cohee continues to type on his keyboard.
He described himself as growling and making animalistic noises as he inflicted the wounds on Barnes. He then chuckled as he provided nauseating details of how he dismembered the man's body.
Mrs. Cohee says her son has autism, ADHD, anxiety, and has been taking medication since he was 5 years old. She says Cohee had a fascination with morbidity, and after watching Silence of the Lambs, told her he wanted to be a crime scene investigator. Terry Cohee recalls finding her son's black backpack months before the murder, containing zip ties, a hammer, and duct tape the court refers to as a kit, although the prosecution wanted it to be called a kill kit.
Followed by an apologetic remark. "Sorry, that's morbid," directed at the investigators. Ultimately, justice prevailed.
Well, today the jury rendered a guilty verdict. Guilty on counts of first-degree murder, mandatory life sentence in that one. Guilty of 2 counts of deceased human body tampering, and guilty of tampering with evidence. Family of the victim, Warren Barnes, were present in the courtroom.
Cohee was found guilty of first-degree murder, the weight of his actions crushing any hope of parole. Yet the true sentence lies in the memory he etched into the hearts of those affected. Warren Barnes, the man who loved books, was silenced.
Another family member told the court being homeless doesn't make a person's life less valuable. She reminded them Warren was not a throwaway person. Finally, the friend who took the picture of Warren seen by so many said the hardworking man who was so giving and loved birds will never again repeat the phrase.
His story, however, became a stark reminder of the darkness that can lurk within the human heart, a darkness that hungered for the night and was satiated with blood.